is Alex, and this will be my first ever video, basically. Um, Not necessarily my first video, I've made videos in the past, but this will be my first video in this kind of journey I'm trying to take of, um, basically going through. Jesus Christ, I'm pale. I'm like glowing a little bit, like, okay. But this kind of journey of like reflecting upon my past and my life and like even my current life and stuff like that and being like really real about it and talking about things that make most other people uncomfortable, it seems like, because I feel like things that make people uncomfortable to talk about need to be talked about. Um Particularly in the realms of addiction and mental illness, which are both things that I have struggled with, and I know that there are a lot of other people still currently struggling with them, and I, in some ways, still am struggling with addiction and mental illness in my own ways as well. And I would like to be very candid about those struggles and what struggling with addiction and what struggling with mental illness, depression, manic depression, self-harm, all of that, what that really is. Because, I mean, a lot of people have been talking about it a lot more lately. There's been a lot more openness, but I feel like it's kind of glossed over, I guess. The really deep issues, are either completely ignored or just kind of joked about because it's hard to talk about them in a serious manner. It seems to be a really common thing for people to just joke about their mental illness rather than seriously talk about it. And I mean, I get that. I do the same thing often. It's taken me a lot of years to be comfortable with just talking about the serious things in my life without making a joke about it, with just talking, you know. It's a hard thing to do, and I feel like it needs to be done, and I feel like I'm actually able to do that in this point in my life, and that's what I would like to do with my life for this period of my life. I mean, there's a lot of other things that I need to do, obviously, in my life. I need to go to work, I need to do all these other things, but as far as, like, a passion focus, I guess, or whatever, I want to focus on just bringing light to these topics that aren't very often talked about, in a really real way. And, like, by that, I mean, like, there seems to be a trend of either romanticizing or demonizing. There's no real in between. Either you'll go to someone's blog or a YouTube channel or whatever, and they're talking about their mental illnesses or whatever it is, and they're just like kind of romanticizing it as if it's like a comfort blanket, which it very much can be. Or it's going to someone's channel or page and being like, every second of this was just pain and it was terrible and it was awful, which it can be. And that's what I really want to express, I guess, is that it's not all black and white. It's not all just... There seems to be this very polarizing thing of either you're mentally ill, you're terrible, you're in an awful spot, or you're great, your mental illness has been cured, you don't suffer from it at all now, or whatever, or you never have. But there is a lot more in between, and what a lot of people don't seem to understand is that most mental illnesses don't have a cure. There is no light at the end of the tunnel. The best analogy I've ever seen was, a Tumblr post that was saying that most people treat mental illness as a race, where you're trying to get to the end of it as quickly as possible. but the mind is more like a garden than a racetrack. You're not trying to get to the end of it, you're walking through it, and your mental illness is like weeds that you've got to weed, and the weeds will never stop growing. But the more you take care of your garden, the more flowers are going to be in it, and the less the weeds will come back, and the less you have to struggle with them. And I mean, that's really what mental illness comes down to, obviously, is just you learn to manage. You still struggle. You never stop struggling. That's just how it is. But it gets easier, and you struggle a little bit less, and you know how to deal with the struggle. And that's all what I want to talk about in the next couple of months, I guess. I have a longer thing planned that I'm working on right now. It's going to be a really big project. And then while I'm working on that project, I would also like to just address all of those little topics that I was just talking about right then with like what mental illness really is, at least for me. Because that's another thing that I would like to address, is that mental illness is different for everybody. Addiction is different for everybody. I'm going to be speaking from my own experiences, but it's completely different depending on who you talk to. Some people are just, I mean, a human is different. One human is completely different from another human, so another human's experiences are going to be completely different from another human's, and I'd really like to bring light to that and bring light to what my particular experiences were, because I'm not the only one that have those particular experiences. All experiences are fascinating in the way that they are all like unique, and yet they are all shared. And I would like the ability for some people to maybe be able to connect with my experiences and know that they aren't alone, because for a long period of my life I have felt very alone, and like I'm not ill correctly, I suppose, and that's not a correct way to feel, and I know that I'm not the only one who's felt that way. I've seen other people feel that way about their various mental illnesses, and that's not right. I want people to know that they aren't alone, that their experience is just as valid as the next person's, even though it's maybe a completely different version of someone else's. It's still just as valid as your human experience. And I feel like that's all really important to bring light to, and that's what I would like to try to do. I'm going to have probably like tips for dealing with depressive episodes or dealing with manic episodes or working through thoughts of wanting to relapse, stuff like that. And then like just story time things of like what it was like while I was still using, stuff like that. What it was like while I was still cutting. And not trying to demonize or romanticize it, any of those things, just being very real. Just this is what life was like, this is what life is like, stuff like that. And I don't know if anyone's going to watch this video. It's just my first video. There's no one that's like sitting there going, oh, I want to wait for this person to make their next video. But I'm really hoping that at least one person who watches this video likes what I am doing or wanting to do